oftentimes somebody will ask, well, why don't you go after, Islam more often? Don't you think Islam is much more dangerous? Globally, you betcha. No doubt about it. In practice of my understanding of the average practitioner, I think Islam in its current state is definitely more dangerous. I don't spend a lot of time on Islam because I don't have to deal with them very often. There's no Islamic power base that is attempting to, by legislation, marginalize my rights or dramatically affect the way business is done in this country. The difference is that people don't see is that Christianity has within it just as much, if we're talking about the Bible as the basis, which, who knows, has within it just as much potential for evil and destruction as Islam. Christianity shouldn't get any credit for the fact that it was dragged kicking and screaming from its evil practices by changing culture in part because of secular, in part because of the merging of different religious cultures. The fact that the Christianity people practice now is safer, less harmful, is not something that Christianity should be credited with. It's something that society as a whole should
do it themselves.
Yeah. In the Bible, and I'm not going to get chapter and verse right now, it's clear. If your husband or wife or somebody should try to lead you to worship false gods, you are to put them to death, and it specifically says that your hands should be the first upon them. That's not open for interpretation. That's not a fuzzy, it's a euphemism, we didn't really mean kill them. It's the same thing as death to the infidels. It's just translated slightly differently, and nobody pays any attention to it or puts it in practice. But the potential is still there. And in the right hands, the right influential people can grab hold of a congregation, and by gradually feeding them more and more authoritative bullshit, can lead them to the point where they can commit atrocities. You see this? Waco, okay, they weren't Christian in any conventional sense, but they built off of that. Jim Jones built off of that. And I'm sorry to all you Christians who are going to get pissed off about this. I'm not making any claim about him. Hitler built off of that. And by the way, funded by the Catholic Church. The potential is still there. And I, despite the fact that I'm not accosted or pained by Christians on a regular basis, and I have plenty of them that are friends and family that I love, who would never go down that route, who could never be led that far astray. They have built their own custom Christianity that is safe and largely protected from that. The potential is still there, and that is why I'm never going to quit what I'm doing.
And to those Christians who would maybe complain that, Matt is admitting it's just sort of a lunatic fringe within Christianity who take things too far, and that's about the same thing as admitting that you're making a slippery slope argument. My response to that is, who do you think is going to keep people from sliding down that slope?
Yeah.
It's not.
Slippery slope isn't always a fallacy.
There's not that much. I grew up in a moderate Christian family, and there was nothing in my Christian upbringing that really put any brakes on the danger of sliding down that slope. The only people I ever met who make an effort to prevent Christians from sliding down that slope are atheists.
Yeah.
We perform an important service, even just keeping Christians from going too nuts.
Yeah. And I freely admit that the problem is in the fringe, but the problems that we have to actually actively have to deal with are in the fringe.
And it's a fringe.
But the problem, the big problem, is one of truth.
Right.
And how you go about discerning it. And I'm of the opinion that I'd prefer people believe as many true things and as few false things as possible as I would want to do.
Yeah, and that's how I got into atheist activism. And I never would have made any kind of public stink about my atheism at all if it wasn't for the fact that I care whether my fellow citizens are believing a bunch of freaking nonsense.
Yeah,
because it matters what you believe.
Your actions affect the rest of us.
Right. Your beliefs affect your actions, and your actions affect everybody else.